Hello, Rachel.
How are you?
Oh, I am so glad to be back. Back here with you, back here to talk about some random misadventures that our friends have gone on. Back here to record our thoughts on The Expanse. How are you? How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well.
What are we here to do today, Rachel? What is our mission?
We're here to talk about the second book in the Expanse series. We did an episode-by-episode breakdown of the show, having not watched it before and not read the books, and now we've watched the show. So we're reading the books because we're not ready to be done engaging in this world. And maybe one time that engagement will be through the video game. Who knows?
Rachel loves games. She's a gamer. And that's why we're the Yum Yum podcast, because Rachel looks at video games and says, yum yum. And I say, no, Rachel, that's a Star Trek Discovery reference. We should, in fact, sit down and review episodes of Sci-Fi TV. But now we're doing Sci-Fi books. And you said it, we've never gone through the books before. When we covered the Expanse series, it was quite a big deal because we were first-timers, but it was also the first time we've done something that had a source material. So which book are we up to, Rachel?
The second one. I said so. But the title, which I think was what you were actually trying to get me to say, is Caliban's War.
Caliban's War. And we have the Goodreads description here, the IMDb of books, I guess. And I love this. This is taking me back to the DVD descriptions of Babylon 5. So here's Caliban's War.
Have we got a moreover?
Moreover, yeah. We have and then, but let's hear it. We are not alone. On Ganymede, breadbasket of the outer planets, a Martian Marine watches as her platoon is slaughtered by a monstrous super soldier. On Earth, a high-level politician struggles to prevent interplanetary war from reigniting, and on Venus, an alien protomolecule has overrun the planet, wreaking massive, mysterious changes and threatening to spread out into the solar system. In the vast wilderness of space, James Holden and the crew of the Rocinante have been keeping the peace for the Outer Planets Alliance. When they agree to help a scientist search war-torn Ganymede for a missing child, the future of humanity rests on whether a single ship can prevent an alien invasion that may have already begun. That is a very interesting way to describe this book. It focuses on things, or frames things in a way that I don't think the book is framing them.
No!
Like the whole alien invasion-y part, it puts you in a certain headspace that the book isn't really doing. Like, it's more focusing on that the humans are the problems all along, and that the alien stuff is there too, but that's not as juicy to sell. Let's just dive in, Rachel. What were your thoughts on Caliban's War?
This one, way more than the first, I was distracted by the changes that the show made to the book. But I kept on being like, wait, was that how it happened? No, definitely, no, that was different. That wasn't there. This person was here and this person did that, and I had much more of that.
This character didn't exist at all in the show, and this one had more to do, and this plot point doesn't exist in the book at all, and this book plot point doesn't exist in the show at all.
Yeah. But I thought the book itself is really solid. Much more than book one, you felt the sort of steady pace towards everything converging. Like, it was just like, yep, step forward, step forward, step forward. And it was an enjoyable journey, like, with each of those steps. And it wasn't overtly predictable, just like, that everything's going to come together in a certain way because we've watched the show, so we have a general idea of what the plot is going to be.
We have a roadmap.
Yeah. So it's like we know, and it's just the nature of these kind of stories that they converge eventually.
Yes. And the first book did that too.
Yeah. It's just like you see the step in front, but it's not like the whole road is laid out from the beginning and is really obvious. It's just like the paver in front of you is really clear.
So did you like this book overall, you would say? Would you say this is an improvement from the first book?
I wholeheartedly say that it's an improvement because there are still a number of things that I'm just like, oh, why the fuck did they do that? Why did they say that? The fact that when we were listening to this during a Bobby chapter, I screamed out and had to do so quite loudly because Ryan was in another room and we had we had the speaker up pretty loud and I wanted him to hear this comment because it was for him to hear.
And please, listeners, sit in your seats because Rachel, believe it or not, I'm shocked to tell you this. She had problems with Bobby. But what was the thing that you had to shout out because of Bobby problems?
I screamed out, Bobby, stop talking.
Stop talking.
No.
No, that wasn't it.
That wasn't it. That was the end of it.
What was the end of it, Rachel? Stop talking, Bobby. Please sit down.
No.
You're cracking yourself up with your own rude comments.
Because I'm embarrassed. But I know that I have to say it. I screamed out, Bobby, stop talking out of your cunt.
We will talk about that for sure. I thought Caliban's War was a mixed bag. That's the best way I can describe my opinions on it. It stepped up its game from the previous book. The writing is a lot more ambitious. There's a lot more of the unique qualities that this sci-fi story has on offer than the first. The first book, we discussed this, but the world itself, the characters themselves, had not that much wow factor to them to make me say, now this is unlike anything that I've ever read or consumed in science fiction before. This book, I think they had a lot more self-awareness about that, and so the building blocks that we got given last time were being played with more, and there was a lot more murkiness and depth to the situations themselves, characters themselves, and I feel like the themes are much more direct, and I could say that the writers have started to show more of their thoughts on the world and their opinions on things than the previous book, which I think lived a little bit more safely in just genre trappings.
Yeah, it was very much also, I think it was also them feeling out the world. Like, they weren't sure exactly where everything sat, and then, having this concrete story within the world.
There are downsides, though. I think the book has certain quirks and eccentricities and just shows a lot more of the writer's personalities, let's just say, or
preferences?
Weird preferences that I don't like. I'll just say it. There's actual things in this book that I outright hate. So it is a mixed bag. There are things that I found to be head-scratching in just how confounding they were. I thought the pacing was a lot more all over the place. There were stretches of it in which I felt it was pinpoint to where we needed to go. The stakes were being built, the tension was being there, but it was relieved with good character stuff. And then other periods of the book, it felt like it was padded out. We were just meandering from here and there with very little reward for it. So mixed experience overall with Caliban's War. Where do we want to go from here, Rachel? What do you want to start off on?
Let's start where that description started, which is there's aliens, which means talking about the proto-molecule. When we had the cliffhanger of the last book, it was like, what the fuck is happening with all of these different things? And those questions are still mostly left unanswered by the end of this book. Instead of asking, what is the proto-molecule doing? It's, what are people doing with the proto-molecule?
I think that is such a great place to kick off from the last book, because in the previous story with Eros Station and that whole thing, it was in the very back end of the book, like, oh, we found this bizarre, otherworldly, toxic thing, and we're going to do whatever with it, and what's the moral ramifications of that? Well, this one, it kicks off with a bunch of that stuff, and we're going to keep running with it throughout the book. And I found that a very rewarding experience overall with how they really started to sink their teeth into using the proto-molecule as just a MacGuffin, really, to examine how terrible humans can be in the universe at large.
The danger of humanity to itself. And they ask this question in a very pointed way towards corporations.
And the government and the military. It keeps
power structures.
These power structures that keep everything together, but they're also the things that keep us apart and destroy as well. Ganymede is the main hub of a lot of the story. We do go off from there, but we start from there, and the
attack that happens that destroys the mirrors that are vital to the agricultural production on Ganymede. As well as what the fuck is this super soldier that attacked these Martian Marines?
I want to call that out. It is well told, the Martian versus the hybrid incident, because we get the vagueness of it, but we also get details enough to make it feel tangible as a reader.
It also feels more real because it is being told very specifically from Bobby's point of view, and she's not going to see everything and she's not going to understand everything in that moment.
Ganymede's devastation is the major thrust of the first half of the book. I really felt it. That was the most exhilarating part of the whole thing for me, was what was basically a beat of the story would then take up the rest of what we were going through. So instead of this just being an incident that happened, oh, the mirrors fell down, these soldiers got killed, and then we're going to separate off and focus on the Rocinante crew and Bobby and Christian and so on. Having Prax be such a pivotal point of view character and living in the aftermath of Ganymede and really getting the day-to-day life and seeing and hearing about and experiencing the decay of Ganymede and the mania and the anarchy and the bureaucracy.
The consequences of Ganymede falling are not immediate to those characters beyond it. And in lots of ways, it is still very immediate to Bobby, but in a different sort of way than it is for Prax.
Because it's personal for Prax. For Bobby, yes, it's personal because she lost her people, but it's still at a distance because it's a professional loss.
Yes.
It's a loss of ego.
Yeah.
As well for Bobby. While with Prax, it's his kid, it's where he grew up, he has all of these memories attached to this place and hopes and dreams.
He cares about what happens to Ganymede as well as what's happened to his daughter. But the fact that his daughter is missing means that he cares less about what's happening to Ganymede and is very quickly resigned to it because he understands. He's like, well, it's at this point, I can't do anything to fix it. As well as the fact that it's not mine to fix and I got other shit that I need to deal with.
I really did appreciate that we got the journey of that with Prax, though, because we, as the reader, with Prax as he is trying to reconcile all of that. At the beginning, he's in disbelief and he's trying to survive and he's trying to process the loss of his daughter and the loss of this place with denial or trying to bury himself in certain tasks or trying to get on by, trying to make some form of community within this. But as you said, he starts to let that go. He resigns himself. And that also mirrors with how he feels about May. There's stretches of this where he thinks, well, she's dead. And that's how he feels about Ganymede. Well, it's dead.
I really found that point interesting when Prax is forcing himself to say to himself that his daughter is dead. And stretching it and training it like a muscle. For both of us, there was a very, very logical and strong plot driven by character, needs, wants, connected to the broader world, and had very clear themes that it was exploring, and all of that contributed to the broader novel.
He is the spine of the story. He is the epicenter. He is the thing that is driving it. And not only do I mean in plots, but on the thematic and emotional resonance. I think this book is far more emotionally vulnerable than the previous. The previous had its attempts, but I think it was too lost in the cerebral and or philosophical musings of the characters. Miller, for instance, although we felt some stuff for him, he was very much a character who was detached from a lot of stuff. So we enjoyed him from the perspective of someone musing on his lot in life. While with Prax, I think he allowed the writers to open up more of the emotional stuff. Hence, the stuff with Holden, where he becomes more of a morally dubious character, is not just interesting on a ethical and moral level, but I'm reacting to it. Like, I have feelings about it. Same with Christian. Christian, enjoyable character for sure, but there's so much to chew on when it comes to how she impacts me as a reader. And I think that all goes back to why this story exists, which is at the bare bones level, you react on just a very, guttural thing of father lost daughter, must get her back. And it's about the loss. And if we don't have a character where we feel the loss, then the big sci-fi incident where it's like all of these people are like devastated and status quo changes it doesn't really have that oomph factor, which I think this book has, that the previous book didn't have as much.
Yes. This book, more than the first, has a very clear target in terms of this is injustice and this is how we fix the injustice and sort of make the world right again.
I had some problems, though, that the story would get lost in the weeds a bit, having to feel the need to answer things that possibly someone would ask as a reader, but that I don't think mattered as much. It really reminded me of in Babylon 5, where JMS, the writer of Babylon 5, would stop things to answer or defend some little minute point that doesn't really matter to the story, but you can't hold him up on it because he answered it in the thing. That's how I feel about this, where I'm talking about all this Prax stuff, but there were many times where I felt we halted it because, well, wouldn't he hire an investigator? And if that happened, then this would happen, then this would happen, then this would happen. And although that is a valid way to tell that story, I think it just halted a lot of the momentum, not just pacing-wise, but there were stretches where I kind of lost the thread of connection to that overall element of this book, because we're just, okay, we're going to have to go through this stuff where it won't really matter.
It does the thing because it is the logical thing to do the thing. And it's like, well, yeah, it would be weird if he didn't, try and do those things like hire an investigator. But also, it's just so clearly not going to work out, so you're not invested in that, really. But that fun, needing funds for the PI is also what leads him to doing the message. So it's it is worked in there, but it just doesn't sit quite right.
Yes.
It's not as, it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb as much as other things.
No, it's just...
It's a gripe more than a, fatal error.
But I think it's just an example of some of the rougher edges of the story, in which it's not streamlined and lean as much as you would hope it is, because yes, as you say, there are things that pay off from that, but you could also argue, yeah, but couldn't you have written it this way, where we don't have to sit for chapters on end knowing the inevitable outcome to this, which is Prax is not going to have enough money, this PI, blah, 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 and we can still keep the core of the story. And I think that is one of the strengths of the TV show adaptation of this, in which Prax existed for 20 minutes in an episode, and we were already hooked and bought in, and we were on that ride, and then it was just go from there. Well,
it didn't have this dip.
It didn't have this dip. What else do you want to talk about when it comes to, I guess you have it in the notes as Prax's quest?
Yeah, because it's all about Prax's quest to get his daughter back. And we already touched on the fact that it had a real heart to it that connected with us both. And I was happy that was the case, because I was a bit worried, because we both loved Prax in the show so much, of how much is this gonna line up? I don't know. I do want to really commend the writing when it comes to how they describe Prax's response and development of a routine on Ganymede. He's like, I've got this list and I work through the list and I do the thing and I do the thing. And then I go back to the top of the list and I do the thing. And that sort of single-mindedness and like it's very much an approach that reflects who he is and like as a person, but also his profession as well. And I really enjoyed that sense of like this really shows who this character is, because he's in such a vulnerable state and under such pressure that it is really showing the core of who Prax is. And also the deep consequences of what's happened on Ganymede to a specific person and to a whole community, because we do see Prax interact with different people on Ganymede and their responses to the problem that's been thrust upon them.
I also like how it gives a moral center to the Rocinante crew's existence, because the Rocinante are basically guns for hire when we step into this story. They exist in this world where they just kill people for money.
Yeah.
And then Holden, just for whim,
this ongoing thing with the OPA.
Yeah, and it's a thing of like Holden, for whim, to make himself feel like he's not an immoral monster, will occasionally let some of them live and take them in to get jailed and do the noble justice thing, because I'm not an evil person. But that is why teaming up with Prax is so great, because we keep seeing that be prodded against of they are here to do this mission for Fred Johnson that maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, but in the end it's inconsequential to helping out Prax to do this thing. But constantly throughout the story, we are butting heads with the fact that we want our heroes, our crew, the Rocinante, to just get over it and help Prax because it's the right thing to do. But not everyone is as easy peasy going to do that. And it's not as if we're getting scenes of them saying, no, I don't want to do that because I'm an asshole. It's just this nagging, consistent thing where someone like Holden specifically is too focused on the bigger picture that he has to be a part of to realize that there's an actual thing to fix right now in front of him and that he could help out.
A specific kind of practicality to it that you're just like, just fucking get over that and see the point. It's over there.
And I like that we talk about the culmination thing, or the convergence, where these characters meet up with these characters meet up with these, but they also do that with the places we want them to be, where there does come a breaking point where they all meet eye to eye on what they need to do and who they are to one another. We have these back and forths where Holden likes Prax, and then he doesn't like Prax. He thinks Prax is dangerous. He thinks we should leave Prax behind. No, Prax is important. No, I actually understand. I feel empathy towards Prax. But not all the time does that line up.
Maybe Prax can actually help us.
Maybe Prax can actually help us. Oh, Amos is a great
he's
guy.
Just a liability.
He's a monster. Yeah. And all of that waffling about, I thought was done very well. I didn't feel that to be the frustrating thing about the Rocinante
kind
crew.
Of stuff can often feel like padding. Of like, well, it's got to have tension somewhere, but it doesn't end up feeling like that here. The arc of this book is Prax. And I don't think there's anything else major that I want to add to it. other than it's nice to have just a whole plot in this book be like, yeah, it was good.
Yes.
And it's so much of the book, and it's like there's not a whole lot that I want to say about it because it was just good. And I feel like a lot of the thematic stuff will come up in other discussions or be more poignant when we get to comparing it to the show.
Of course. The focus on Earth is brought in. We have Christian
Is here!
Christian is here, and she is the avenue we have to learn more about Earth, to learn more about the politics of this series itself and how it is operating, and just fill in a lot of the bigger picture overall. There's a lot of teasing of things to come. There's a lot of explanations of things that happened in the previous book, but also just in the world itself. There's a lot more of what we got from the show in that way of talking about structures and talking about the powers that be, the haves and have-nots.
I like the way that we build up Christian's personality alongside the developments at the UN. Like, we get to see her in action and the consequences of all of these different things that are happening and the way that Earth is responding, and Mars as well, but we don't get a point of view character of Mars.
I'm mixed because it's the nature of the beast of this is the point, but also I got a little bit annoyed with it, which is we get these what I will call story arcs within the Earth/UN side of the story, where we get the Ehrenreich betrayal and the long-term play of him being this mega villain, and we get her Christian's aide, Soren, and how he's actually double cross, and we get Wynn, the evil admiral.
Also divided into different sections.
But I think it just had more of the cohesive through line of the practical element of the story being like save the daughter.
Stuff, yeah, didn't as much have that cohesion. Like, it's all linked, but it's more linked like the way that a chain link fence.
What I was going to say was I just found disappointing and dissatisfying conclusions to some of these things. Soren is this character we spend so much time with.
And it's just really obvious.
It's not even that it's obvious. You just don't get that sense of
dull
satisfaction when he is concluded. And that's the point. But that's the point. Because Christian's trying to say to Bobby/us, the game of politics isn't exciting, it's slow-moving, and most times seemingly uneventful. So to make that come across, you have people like Soren and Ehrenreich, their conclusions are just nothing happens to them, and that's how they lose. Nothing happens. Ehrenreich doesn't get any more power. They're forgotten. They're just pieces that are taken off the board, while, say, what we want is what we get with Mao, where we have this cat and mouse game. We have people lying to each other directly, but they both know that they're lying, so there's lies within lies within lies. And then when everything comes together at the end, we can have this, like, the pure fist pump yes of Christian being like, here's how I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to keep you alive and make sure you see everything that you've done turn to ash. And that's rewarding because we've been experiencing the ramifications of this man's actions for the entire book, and there's the catharsis. While with other elements of the UN story and Christian's story, You don't have that. They rob you of that on purpose. And I don't know if that was good or not. Like, how do you feel about that stuff? Like, do you feel like that is a good thing overall and we're just too close to it right now to fully appreciate it? Because that's what my worry is. I'm like, no one talking about it, I'm like, oh, that seems good actually. But when I read through it, I just was a little bit left lacking by it.
It doesn't hit as hard because of all of those things. It just is just like, oh, yep, oh, yep, oh, yep. And that is part of the point, but it does mean that it doesn't have the same resonance in the immediate aftermath that other plot points of this book do.
Why do we still appreciate this, though? One could argue that most of this stuff is exposition. Most of this stuff is telling us what is happening and why it's happening and what we do.
Because it is all of this slow-moving, methodical things that are happening, and on the surface, nothing's happening. But Christian slowly explains to Bobby, and thus sort of
to us,
to us, that no, really all of these things are happening underneath. And we're getting a glimpse into a world that we are very unfamiliar with. But we understand the stakes of what is happening. So it's not boring because we understand and appreciate the importance of it, and we give a shit about our central characters that are involved in it.
I like that it's a different way of telling a story about how one can do good and or make things better, but there's struggles to it, because we have the Rocinante running around with their guns and their ship and their muscles and their armor and all of that. And we are so aware of how those things and those type of characters get the job done. But we get to see with Christian and Bobby and all of the characters that surround them, the other ways that you can go about things, the more administration roles of things, you could argue. But you're right, it's about how it's on the surface, seemingly nothing's happening, but when you scratch underneath there's so much happening. It's all these subtle things, it's all of these double crosses, these words within words within words within words. And I think the thing that makes it exhilarating to read is that the character that is telling us it is experienced in it. They live this, and we get to know that there's costs to it on a personal level, but she's worried about the costs of if she doesn't do this on a bigger level. And so that's what makes it more exhilarating. Also, the countering of Bobby thinks it's all stupid and boring and dull, and she just wants to go out and punch some people and do badass marine stuff.
A woman of action.
She's a woman of action, and she has little patience for people of inaction, which she views this entire process to be. What are some of your favorite details in the book? Just things that they sprinkled in there. I think about with the UN stuff. I like the stories of Earth and how the works there. When Bobby went to the cafe and she was talking to the baristas there and learning about credits and how Mars works when it comes to education and getting jobs and
is a bigger thing. But I like Avasarala's tea obsession and its origin with Arjun.
And her love of, what was it, pistachios? She's always like eating. There's many moments in the book where it's like, And then this old grandma got up and she like emptied into a bin all of these shells, like pistachio
She's
shells.
eating them on the Rossi, and they explain what happened. Like how
floating around.
It won't fuck everything up.
But you've seen that episode of The Simpsons, right? Where, oh no, a Pringle. A chip. That's basically her. I like that. I really liked getting to spend time on Tycho as well, getting to feel that there's this safe harbor, but they lose it because Holden just can't help himself is a wonderful piece. What did you feel about with this particular story, the emphasis on the physical differences between the different factions? Because Bobby's height and her physical prowess is both a pro and a con, and same with the Belters and Earth, all of that stuff. How did you feel about that? Because they really started to talk about and use it in the plot a lot more.
Yeah, and felt like there were a lot more moments where it's just like, oh, that person is like this, which means that they're a Belter. This person must have grown up in a gravity well, so like they're this or this, or like, but they have these sensibilities. Like there's a lot more of that thinking described, and from multiple people's perspectives. So you are really getting the sense of how innate and immediate the judgment of categorizing people is to this world, which is really important for you to really understand the division that has been created and fostered between these different locations and pockets of humans.
You hit the nail on the head. I totally agree. I did appreciate that it added to the stakes at times as well. I liked the stretch in which Bobby was having to follow Soren and had to come up with all of these different things to hide herself because she physically stands out. She's much taller, she's bulky, and she has to do this, and this, so she isn't spotted. And I thought that was good. Also, as you said, it can form these bonds, but also like separate people. There's many moments in which Holden is relieved at times to see just an Earther. Oh, okay. Or Belters. I was like, oh, Belters, that type of thing was played a lot too. Oh, I want to mention this now because I think we'll forget about it, but Holden's parents, we get a lot more about his family life, a lot more of the life on the farm.
My parents are racist.
That was an amazing touch. Wow.
Yes. Loved it.
Honest question. We can start breaking into the characters, and I think I'm just going to jump to Holden first since we just mentioned him. And I want to ask this about him. They mentioned that his family are racist towards Belters, but he's different. He's not like that at all.
But they also explain how, of course they're racist, because these are the messages about Belters that they get. And this is what they've seen, and this is what they've experienced. And noting that, they're racist, but they wouldn't call themselves racist.
But is Holden is he clean of any of that? Do you think? Like, how do you feel about Holden and his relationship to the other factions and to people? Because we were talking about that in the last book. When we're in his head, he reads people in a very odd way at times, like a very uncharitable way. And I think they really amped that up in this book, where when they said his parents are racist, I'm like, yeah, I'm not shocked, because I think Holden himself has some weird hang-ups about Martians and about Belters. He may think he's better than that, but I think he does. I think he does have some stuff going on in his head at times, and even though he's in a relationship with a Belter, some of the ways he talks about Naomi is gross.
Oh, yeah.
And not just gross and like sexually weird, but just
he
like...
He does not recognize his own biases. He's very much close, if not fully in the camp of, I have a black girlfriend, so I can't be racist kind of thing.
Yes. But do you think that's intentional on the book's part, or do you think that's just us getting that?
I do wonder, because there are a lot of unchecked biases of the authors shining through, so I don't know.
We'll break that open as we go along, but let's keep focusing on our main man, Holden. How did you feel about him in this book? We liked him a lot more than in the TV show with the first book, but how did you feel about him in Caliban's War?
I just sort of felt indifferent to him most of the time, because he is here in service of other people's plots more than his own.
He has a lot of friction. He has interpersonal conflicts with pretty much every character.
Yeah, it's just like Holden is just he's having a rough time of it in his personal life. He gets fired and he's really happy about it, and that's
Naomi
really
nearly breaks
funny.
up with him as well.
It's
yeah,
really funny, and then his girlfriend dumps him. Basically,
yeah, she got him.
Yeah, like she's just like, I think we might be done. I'm going over here.
Well, the underlying thing about Holden is he's worrying if he's becoming a psychopath, and that's very much underlined because he starts to relate to Amos a lot. He starts to bond with Amos a lot. He starts to see a lot of himself in Amos, and Amos is really fucked up in this particular book, and so Holden is constantly wondering about himself, but then he keeps also worrying that he's like Miller, that he's too apathetic, that he's too amoral. Like there's a lot of comparisons to these other characters, and I thought that was well illustrated in this. I think that since we get to spend the time in his mind and we get to hear the way he thinks about other people and how that uncharitable factor we noted in the first book is ramped up a lot more, but also he's far more self-aware that he is being unfair. But what I love, although it makes him an unlikable character, it makes me understand him more, which is he doesn't stop after he recognizes that he's being unfair. You know what I mean? Like, he knows, oh, me having this hard-on for Fred Johnson, even though all of the evidence and all of the stuff and everyone's telling me that I'm in the wrong here, like, everything's pointing to, like, I'm overreacting, he still doesn't stop, though. He still is going to fucking do it. And he knows it's wrong, and he knows that he probably should do something different, but he can't help himself. He's like, I can't help myself. And in a weird way, that's an inherently unlikable thing about his character. He made me viscerally annoyed throughout the entire book, but I understood him more than in the series when he went through this exact same arc in which he was harder to relate to, and I like that a lot more. Now you say like he worked for a lot of other people's plots, but how did you react to all of that stuff? Was that handled well in your opinion? Were you just too annoyed with him? I mean, especially with this era of him in the show, we were not at all fans of it. So how did you fare with it in the written form?
A little bit better, I think, because it was stretched out more. and I had more of a feeling of when we were going to connect back and be in Holden's shoes again. And I think the nature of it being an internal monologue also helped with this, because you know that he's questioning himself as well. You get that time to sit with that. And even if it is him going, no, it's not my fault, I'm not the problem, you still feel his feelings about that.
I think also because we do get to spend the moments with the other characters reacting off of him, we are given permission not to like him. We're not always supposed to think, oh, James Holden is a virtuous character here. The writing itself is saying he is not a good person. And I like that. I really need that, because again, when we talk about like the differences between this and the adaptation on TV, I think inherently, especially in a television series, they want you to think their main guy is worthy of being the main guy because inherently at the end of the day, they are right. And although the series did eventually get around to deconstructing that, I think the book has just gotten there faster. It just kind of went into it. Like even in the first few chapters where we are aware that they are killing people left and right for months on end, but then, oh, he's virtuous because this one time he decided we're going to board him and we're going to take him in. Like that actually made me grossed out.
A show is afraid to do that.
Yeah.
A book is not. You have way more books in general, but way more books that are willing, and there's entire subgenres that are all about a detestable main character.
Mm-hmm. And whether or not it is aware of its main character being dubious
it's
at
not
times.
all like Lolita.
I did want to fucking punch Holden throughout this. Like, I was getting the reactions I had when we watched the show of, like, this fucking guy. But the payoff to the story itself also saying, this fucking guy sucks, were far more honest. Fred Johnson, great example. In the series, we said straight off the bat, why is this guy talking to Holden? Because the way Holden was portrayed and the way that he acted didn't line up. In this book, when Holden started to do that, guess what happened? Fred Johnson was immediately like, I'm not fucking talking.
Fuck you.
Fuck off. I'm not talking to you. You're being an unreasonable little shit who's unworthy of my time. And I'm like, thank you. That's exactly what would happen. And so there's far more integrity to Holden being, a character lacking integrity at times. And so I appreciated him. Now, this is where we have to talk about this. Hindbrain. Hindbrain. Don't worry, Bobby has a lizard brain. Hindbrain. All right. If you haven't read the book, I'm so sorry to tell you that they are a lot hornier than the show. And is it a monkey's paw where we wanted the show to be horny and then it's like, nah, sorry, the books are horny, and then we read the books and they're horny, but like in a really, like just deeply, deeply unsettling and uncomfortable way. I've said it before, but I'm not as big of a reader as you are, and I'm not as big of a reader of horny books like you are. But am I out of pocket here to just say that the whole Holden being horny for Bobby is just really just icky. It's not like I don't know. I didn't find it very erotic or worth having in the story at all. Rachel, thoughts?
Agreed. Can we move on?
No, we've got to talk about it. We've got to talk about the hindbrain because we can pin it on, but we can't pin it on Bobby. It mainly comes from Holden. It mainly comes from Holden.
Which makes it really feel like it's an author thing. Like, it feels like they heard a theory and they were like, oh, that makes sense. Gotta talk about that.
To expand upon this, in case we also need to refresh people's memories, because I brought this up to my brother-in-law, whose favorite book series is The Expanse, by the way, was a little bit raising of the eyebrows and being like, oh, I kind of forgot about that stuff. So
it gives me hope that it's contained.
I doubt it. We get the convergence, we get the crossover with characters meet up, and Holden, he's been having his sexy times with Naomi. Standard fare at this point. Whatever, that's fine. Okay, it's a little bit weird that he does fetishize that she's black and Asian and a belter. Okay, that's whatever, but it's not good, but it's it's a thing that's established in their relationship from the previous book. It's nothing new. All right, it exists. But Bobby comes on the ship. And not only does she come on the ship, it's the chapter where it's like, hey, Bobby's now on the ship. Like, this is the first real chapter in which we're dealing with the fact that one of the main characters of this book is now talking to our other main characters, and it's from Holden's point of view. And all Holden does, like, for 60% of the chapter, is talk about how fucking hot Bobby is, that Polynesian women turn him on, that it is actually like a fetish thing for him. Like, he's really aroused. He exoticizes Bobby. It's so bizarre. He, like, talks about, like, oh, man, I can't. I have a girlfriend. And then he kind of gets in these pedantic little weird defenses of, like, well, it's not me who's thinking this. It's my hindbrain. So I can't be blamed to be having an erection for Bobby. It's my hindbrain. Hey, it's okay. I don't have a Polynesian girl, but I do have a black Asian girlfriend, and that's kind of Polynesian. What the fuck was that? What the fuck was this? Now, this is the type of thing that makes me loathe James Holden. I'm like, I want him to be horny, but not like this. Not like this. Rachel, I'm talking so much about it, but hey.
I don't want to say anything about it. I don't want it to exist.
You don't want it to exist, but it's here. Why is it here?
It's dumb. I said it before. I feel like they just heard about it and were like, oh, excuse to be horny. Explanation of why men are horny. Hindbrain.
But why is it here? What does it add? Why are they doing that? Why is Holden like that? At all? Why is it here?
Like, I don't know, it was written in, like, 2012.
Oh, so long ago.
No, but the idea of, like, justifying male hypersexuality was way more acceptable. Like, the idea of boys be boys, boys will be horny kind of thing was much more just the norm, right? Men get erections, they're turned on by women. This is the nature of our world, the nature of our species. So the idea of them justifying this biologically with this hindbrain bullshit is not a shocker to me.
I understand that, and I can perfectly get on board for them telling a story about how Bobby, who is so physically different to them, will provoke a reaction. Of course, that's understandable. And look, Holden being in a relationship doesn't mean he's exempt from finding other women attractive. Ah, man, it's just a case of it's just awkward. It's really awkward when Holden turns and he sees Christian, and Christian gives him a look of acknowledgement that Bobby is hot, and we need that to be told to us. Like, here's the thing. Why is it here, though? Like, you explained all of that stuff, but, like, nah, like, I don't know, it's just such a weird narrative beat to include. Like, we have been waiting in the book for these characters to meet, and the first thing the first thing we get is, she's hot. I want to fuck her because she's Polynesian specifically, bro. But it's okay. I have a girlfriend who's black and Asian and a belter, so I get a bingo card of like different exotic things I can fetishize. It's so weird to have that be an angle. Like, I'm not a prude or anything, but I raised my eyebrows a lot. And it doesn't end there, Rachel. It's not like it happened in that one chapter.
No, it's through the whole book. And then you get Bobby's version of it with lizard brain. And, like, she gets on the Rossi and she's just like, wouldn't fuck. If drunk, maybe would fuck. Like, with all of them. And it's just like, I don't care. And I don't know why you do either. Thus, I got to the point, like, she does it on Earth as well, right? She talks about specifically Soren for a solid, like, it felt like minutes of this audiobook, where she's just like, these are the criteria that under which I would maybe fuck him, but I won't. And, she refers to her lizard brain in terms of that, as well as, like, her need to punch things. But it was her various comments about the men that she interacts with that led me to make the comment that I shared at the top of the episode.
Yes. I have a question. I want your opinion.
Yeah.
We're only 2 books in, so we don't know to a full extent. When do they get good at writing female characters? Because half, if not most of them, are written like this, though.
Yes,
or the males talking about them like that.
Even
like, we gotta know.
Avasarala is not exempt because they talk about how she's a grandma, but she's kind of hot for a grandma.
But withered and ugly. And
wouldn't fuck her. Like,
and also she's Indian. You got to throw that in as another reason why she's not available. Same with Alex, by the way. There's a weird undercurrent of this book that's got to let you know the 2 Indian characters are quote unquote undesirable, and I'm like, why are we mentioning that as a part of the reasonings? I mean, it's already bad enough to be like, Alex is 50? Like, that's a reason?
Yeah.
But okay.
Yeah.
Right. You can't be attracted to him. He's 50 and Indian. What? What was that part? That was like near the end. That was like the last chapter of the book. They had to mention that. They're like, hey, by the way, and balding. He's like, okay, all right.
Yeah, it's a little bit odd, and it's just like, okay, like, yeah. Just because we have this new type of prejudice doesn't mean that the old ones have gone away. But it is weird that multiple times and multiple characters are like, no, Indian people aren't hot, but Asian.
Yeah, Polynesian. Polynesian or black Asian. Yeah, woo, Blasians, yes. I gotta ask though, here's the thing. No, here's the thing. You said a thing that I just raised my eyebrows at because I don't believe it, which is, I don't think that they are telling the story that, because we have new bigotries means the old ones are gone.
I also don't agree that that's what's happening here, but you could claim it.
It feels as if the writers themselves are hung up on a bunch of the stuff about their own characters. So let's talk about Bobby. I'm skipping around on your list of characters, but let's talk about Bobby. I liked Bobby in the book. I liked her observations.
Thumbs up for Bobby.
I liked her actions. I liked her quips. I liked her disdain. I thought she was introduced better. We went straight into the massacre.
Which
and
is
went from
what
there,
we thought it was going to be.
and what it needed to be. And she still has a lot of the same beats that we saw in season 2. Great. Unfortunately, I can't say I love the character, and I can't say I don't hate the character either, because the writers just lump a bunch of dumb shit onto it. Like, you already said it. She talks out of her cunt, but it's not to like a degree in which it's like, oh, well, this character's horny, or she thinks with her cunt, like you say. I don't know what it is, but why do you think it crosses over the line into it being a thing in which you could say it's just the writers kind of not really writing a female character very well? Like, why does it cross that line for us, do you think? What is it about it for you?
It's just a weird thing that multiple of these characters are just so preoccupied with their sexual attraction towards individuals. Because it is just about, would I fuck or not?
And why I'm turned on.
Yeah, it's just that. And it is... it's just surface level shit, right? And you don't get any sense that it is a meaningful part of who they are. It's not... like, yeah, okay, these people fuck. Okay, whatever. Like... you get a little bit of it, like a significance to Holden's preoccupation when he has the part where he's just like, oh, I've only ever just had sex. Basically, he's like, I've only ever had sex and now I'm making love, and making love is so much better.
And that works great because it's a continuation of his characterization from the previous book, and it ties into his relationship with a character we know and care about.
Deepening our understanding. But, like, just having a continual part of these characters in a monologue be smash or pass doesn't add anything.
It's so takes you out of the narrative, especially with Bobby, because Bobby has a very, very, very detailed relationship with Soren. They get on, they don't get on. Here's their banter, here's their dynamic, here's the things she hates about him, here's the things she likes about him. It's all reasonable for what type of relationship? A rivalry. That's good. We know Soren's a bad guy. He's clearly up to something. Okay. She hates him. She hates this guy. And so it takes you out of the narrative when she has to let you know she would fuck him if the conditions were like this. And I'm like, what a weird detail to throw in there. It's like unnecessary. It's so unnecessary.
So different than Amos being like, don't get me wrong, if she'd let me, I would fuck her. Like,
because I was clear from the relationship beforehand.
Yes. And it says something and it's funny. Like,
and it's something he says aloud. He has no filter, so that's why it's funny. Well, in this is supposed to be like a humorous detail, but also like, what? And she does that all the time. She's got to let you know she would fuck this person, she would fuck this person. And here's the thing that makes it a bit awkward. We mentioned it with Holden, but like the book itself, the writers themselves have created this strong female character, and they make sure to let you know like her ethnicity and her features and her height. And I thought, like the show, honestly, that was just a part of the character. Like, hey, we have this badass, strong female character who happens to be Polynesian. Isn't that cool? And I thought that was going to be what they did in the book. They did that in the show. You can find Frankie Adams sexy all you like, but in the show, I didn't feel like they sexualized her because she has these features and because she's a strong woman. You yourself can find that attractive. I did. But, like, I didn't think the show was doing it deliberately. I didn't think they were going out of their way to do it. But in the book, that's what they do. With the hindbrain stuff, with Soren being, like, an object of desire but hateability, like, all this stuff, like, it's very awkward that it's the case to me that the writers have created a character that they themselves would want to fuck. That's how I describe it. In the book, it felt like they were so happy with themselves about creating this hot character. And the thing is, there's a time and place for those. And Rachel, I'll pass it back to you because you read a lot more of these type of books where they are the horny books, but they also have, like, detail, like, plots and, you know, like, you read your fantasy erotica stuff. What do you have to do to make that, like, equilibrium work? Because I would not say, oh, this book is a horny book, like, in the way that you, like, you know, that this would necessitate these things.
It is about biology, right? And there is never the understanding that any of these thoughts will become action. So there is a disinterest in them because they're not going anywhere. And a bunch of them are making that point of, yeah, this isn't going to happen, right? So you get tired of being just told, no, 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 right? Like, it's just useless information.
I agree. It's also just not very arousing.
No,
because it's
part of why it's not arousing is because it's just like, well, you don't find them attractive. So now I'm thinking, well, I guess I don't, maybe, whatever.
But when you get to the hindbrain stuff where it is all about that stuff, I think it's unattractive because it's such a whiplash effect. It's such a whiplash of like, what, we're doing this now? Why are we doing this near the end of the book? What the fuck is going on? This isn't the way I expected to go, nor wanted. That's the thing. Wanted it to go.
Yes,
I want Holden to have a relationship with Bobby, but the relationship we got is he wants to fuck her. And he wants to fuck her because she is this, and this. That's why. And it's like, that's his relationship with Bobby. At the end of the book, It's not like he respects her. It's he finds her hot. And if you say, oh, he respects her, a part of the respect is he finds her hot, which is just so odd to me. And like, it does that throughout the thing. Like, you didn't even put Naomi in your list of characters. You just have her lumped in with Rocinante crew because other than Naomi being like the one who wags her finger at Holden, what does she get to do?
Nothing.
She has some playful moments. I like the whole little bit about no kids. And we get to giggle because we know what her relationship is when it comes to having a kid. So
yeah, but
that's
then,
fun for us.
It was an interesting detail that they fleshed out as well of explaining how and why it would be really difficult for Holden and Naomi to have a kid and for that process to be safe for her and to result in a healthy child.
I'm glad that they did that, but it is that thing of be careful pulling that string because how the fuck do you actually raise a baby in space? Like in 0G? Like we got some of that told in the previous book and in the show, but like I'm thinking like, how do they sleep? Do you have to put them in a cage? You know what I mean? Like, because they'll just float away. You know, like what happens if they vomit? What do you do? You're fucked. Like, you have to be there the whole time. You know, like this. But that's nonsense crap. That doesn't actually matter to the story. Naomi was good though. Like for what she did get, I liked her pushing back against Holden and being out of love because he's not acting like the person she is in love with. I thought she was a good voice of reason for the
I liked
story.
The way that she addressed those concerns.
I just wish she had more to do. They leaned into her being the computer person a lot more. She's the tech she's the hacker.
She's got the skills.
Alex got more. He got more stuff in this one.
Yeah. Still not a whole lot, but more.
It's crew glue stuff. Like, he's the levity. He's the one that has a remark to make about the events. We still got the dinner scene. Like, we still got the lasagna equivalent scene where we're going to sit down and have a meal and connect. And we still had those moments throughout these stories. I liked, I know I just slammed all this horny stuff, but one of my favorite moments was Alex being horny for a lesbian. And then remarking, like, I have the wrong bits. And it's like, uh-oh.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was good.
Because that told us something about their relationship and about them as individuals.
It is.
And it wasn't, oh, no, I don't get to fuck her. Oh, no, woe is me. I always find the lesbians like...
I liked his relationship.
Or I can turn her.
I can turn her. I liked his relationship with Bobby. I like that it wasn't driven by him wanting to fuck her. That's a part of it for sure, but I thought it was handled with a lot more dignity and grace than a lot of the other elements. It's still a part of why he's into her, but I think it's more like he's like, oh, someone like me, a fellow Martian.
He's got a crush. It goes beyond just physical attraction and smash or pass. It's I get you in a way and you get me because we share this thing and also you're hot.
Is it the deepest, let's say, companionship in the books thus far? Because Holden is still very much like, me bone Naomi. He. That's still part of his dynamic with Naomi. And in this book, he just doesn't listen to her the whole time. I kind of was drawn more to Alex and Bobby because of the restraint.
I was more drawn to Bobby and Avasarala.
As romance? No, companionship, I know.
Yeah,
I use the term companionship for a reason, yes. I mean, why? What did you like about them two together?
I liked the way that they have push and pull, but still make each other grow through challenging each other. It's not, oh, you showed me how to be a better person. Wow, thank you. It's like, oh, that's fucking right. That makes sense. I gotta do it this way now.
Was Christian too good of a person for you? Because when I think back to her character in this particular story, she's a fairy
godmother to the galaxy.
She's a very virtuous character, relatively speaking.
She's crude.
Yeah, she swears like a sailor, but the thing is, she knows how the game is played and she has to play the game, but she's always on the right side of things and she's willing to sacrifice so much because she knows that so much is at stake.
I need to admit something.
Yes.
There is a point with Avasarala where I was disappointed.
You were disappointed?
I was disappointed. I understood, but I was disappointed. And I can't remember if this was in the show as well or not, but the explanation of why she has a potty mouth.
Why does she have a potty mouth again?
Because being a crude woman
is a distraction.
And allows her to get the upper hand a bunch. And I'm like, I just wanted her to like swearing, god damn it. I just wanted that to be a part of who she was, not a tool in her arsenal. But it makes sense.
But that is a part
everything about her is a tool in her arsenal.
Yes. Well, I was, you touched upon something I actually found very good about the characterization of Christian in this. So, in the series itself, she is presented villainously from the start. Like she has people hanging up on hooks, for Christ's sake. Like she's
torturing from the drop.
And then you get the whole, like, you don't like playing games unless it's your way. In this, that's very much stripped away. While I actually liked the way she had to become this very rude, crude, looked down upon but feared woman because of who she is. Like, it actually matters that she's old and a woman in this story, because we get a lot of talk about how this is a boys' club, that this is something that is hard to gain any traction in when you're a woman and when you're a person of a certain age as well, that people will overlook you, will underestimate you, will treat you like fucking dirt because
so
of
many
what you are.
Of her retirement.
And so many mentions about how men suck as well. And I thought the potty mouth thing and her, talking to people like this and talking to people like that and speaking outside of her mouth like this and presenting herself as like this kooky old woman that eats pistachios all the time, like eats nuts all the time and like is someone that is the quiet one in a big conference meeting and all of that. I thought that helped flesh out her character so much. Like, that was some of my favorite stuff, was actually learning about Christian from the point of view of other characters. When we actually got to learn about her from herself, it was all very, very good, but I still appreciated and very much adored hearing Bobby's stance on this mystery woman, while we know who Christian is. Like, when Bobby's making these observations, we know that they may be right on the money or completely off the mark, but there's joy to be had with Christian in that way. They did something about her backstory too, which is her son died from an accident. It wasn't some belter attack. It wasn't this or this or this. It fuels her in this way. It was just
an accident that, under other circumstances, he would have been fine or he would have just been injured. But in this specific case, it worked out this way.
Her husband, still the beautiful, tender, mature, complex relationship with him.
Yep.
I was happy to get that, and it felt as if it was really lived in, and she worries about him so much. Like, he is her weakness in her soul. Like, she's closed herself off so much because of what she has to do, but he is the thing that grounds her, that keeps her real. He's the one that has the little phrase about like how she has to put on her mask and all of that, but she takes it off for him and he can see through it all. And I really liked all of that stuff. Although he was a very minor player, I liked him. I wanted more of him, and I was, it's very sappy, but it got me when she got to reunite with him at the end of the book after being away for so long, because they didn't forget to ground her character with that relationship.
I adored the line where she was just like, I'm not in a rush to get back to Earth anymore because Arjun's here. I
really liked when Bobby asks her to like stop trying to do political maneuverings, and Christian's like, but that's the way I show my friendship. I give people political favors because she can't stop. Like, she can't stop herself. It's who she is. It's a part of the job. You talk about like the tools and whatever, but that's exactly it. Like, the tools are who she is now. That's the byproduct of the job. And I think it's a beautifully, beautifully captured, and probably my favorite exchange in these books so far, which is when Bobby asks why doesn't she just step down? Why doesn't she just retire? And
why she has to accept Aaron Wright's job.
And Christian just says she will when her son comes home. And we know that won't ever happen. Bobby doesn't know that, I'm pretty sure. Like, only we know that information as the person in that conversation. And it's just such a bittersweet thing to say, but it also says so much that she won't stop, and that this wound of hers is what drives her in a lot of ways. I thought Christian was a great addition to the story. I didn't miss her too much in the first book, but now we have her here. I actually retroactively miss her in that first book. They did a stellar job with her.
They made the right choice.
Talk about your boy, Amos. He got a lot of stuff here.
Where should I start? I guess I'll start with just his friendship with Prax is as amazing as it was in the show for me. I adored every interaction that we got with the two of them, and I really appreciated the way that Amos kept on trying to adjust his expectations of Prax. He got in, tried something, didn't work, responded, adjusted, tried again. Like, that part was, it just added so much depth to Prax's stuff. The interactions with Amos and Amos's reactions to what's happened to May. And quite different than in the show, he really just lays out what happened to him.
Why he is like this, yeah.
Why he is like this and why he exists as an individual. Like, the origin of Amos all the way back to being like 2 cells.
Oh, yeah. It's really, really just put there. And it's matter of fact, and it's very frank, and it's just as upsetting and just as humanizing as well of the character. It really makes you understand what he's about and why he's acting this way. Because he's scary in this book. Like in the first book, I mentioned it. If you hadn't seen the show, you wouldn't have really picked up like he's a fucking sociopath, fucking violent creep. You just thought he was a little bit socially awkward, a little bit off.
Like in this book, a bodyguard, a bouncer, not an assassin.
Not a brute in this way. And in this book, it's really in your face. Like, he is lovable. You're laughing at him one moment, and then the next moment, like, snap of the fingers, you're fucking terrified of him. What can he do? What's he capable of doing? And then he'll turn around and give you like a very just jolly explanation of why he did that. And you're just left there as is Holden in the dust being like, okay, I guess I got an explanation. And I thought he was much more in line with the Amos we know than where we were in the last one. Does the reveal of his past in this way, I'm not too sure. Does it work? Does it lessen? Because we were very praising of how it was a slow drip feed and very subtle and very much leaving it to us to figure out in the series. But here in the book, they just drop it. They just drop it like a bag of rocks, and you have to deal with that now. How do you feel about that choice?
It shifts things, but not as much, because these were things that we already knew about Amos. So it's not a shocking revelation in the way that it could have been if we did things the other way round. So it just feels like, yep, that's part of Amos's story, and it's made more horrifying because he is so matter-of-fact about it. Because this is a fact of life and a fact of his life. That this is what happens to people on Earth. This is what happens. This is what people do. This is the way that the world works. And more strongly, I think, in the book than in the show, he's like, and it shouldn't be that way. I feel like in the show at this point, he's like, yep, and that's the way that it is. But I can help this one kid.
He's
I
far
can
more
make a difference
hard-lined
in
on
this
it in
one
this.
way. Whereas, I don't know what.
It's his most top priority in terms of like what he exists to do. Like, he doesn't have in this one like the 3 types of people you need to protect. In this one, it's like, oh, I, above all else, have to protect children in general. I loved, now this is something that makes Amos really stand out to me as a character, because we need this to help deepen him, which is he has all of this protection towards kids, but we actually get to spend time with him and May together, and him playing around and teaching May how to do naughty things like give people wet willies, and just I thought that was such a sweet, beautiful thing, because as scary and terrifying as Amos is, and like this whole a functional sociopathic, psychopathic person,
He's a protector.
He's a protective person, but we also get to see how he can come across as a normal, reasonable person that you spend time with. Because this is a person who nearly gets Holden killed at several points because of how much of a, flippant
noob.
Yeah, what was that, sorry?
Noob.
Yeah, and also just how flippant he is about everything. But at the end, when we get to see him in an element we understand, it makes him far more like tolerable. Like, you understand why people give him a pass, because he comes across like a real person. Like him hanging out with May, awesome, because we didn't get that too much. We see in the series he's very protective about children, but we don't actually get to see him hang out with children all that much. Like, it's like 1 or 2 little moments, but in this book, we get a good little stretch at the end of just laughing, playing pranks, talking to one another. I like that stuff. I thought it was really sweet. Anything else about Amos, your boy? Any further observations? Anything about his characterization that leapt out to you in this particular one?
I will note that I still adore the character. I do not love him as much as I do show Amos.
Well, as we hurtle towards the end of this discussion, let's go over just some of those differences of the book and the series, and things that leapt out, stood out to us, things that worked or didn't. We won't go over all of them because this is very different to the show.
Yes.
Very different to the show.
I want to rapid fire go through a couple of the ones that we've already touched on. And then there's at least 2 major changes that I don't think we've referenced yet. Bobby's introduction in the book works much better. We don't get those really awkward and boring scenes of her.
It's less contrived. With
her crew beforehand.
It just cuts to the chase.
We do think that it was a good move to introduce Avasarala in season 1.
Because it gives Earth stakes. Because in the first book, we talked about this, the danger of Earth being taken out doesn't really matter because all it has to bank off of is, well, that's Earth. We live there.
Yes.
That's the thing that's most important. But we don't really have a connection to it in the book itself. The most we get is Holden has family there, but we don't know much about them. While with this, Christian is the person we care about, and she's surrounded by other people, other characters. It makes it a living, breathing place. It doesn't make it just a concept like it does in the books. While in the series, say what we want about the first one, making Avasarala there from the beginning helps so much. So that's one of the things. I have one that I want to quick fire off of. One of the changes in streamlining the series is we don't have an abundance of side characters. In this, we have so many side characters that you don't really care as much. Like, they exist and then they're gone. They don't really feel like they were part of the story. They just felt like a function in the story. I think about Wendell, for instance, the Pinkwater mercenaries, security guys that help Holden and the crew while they're having to deal with like the evil scientists and the hybrid creature that they don't know exists yet. Although, like, yeah, that's a part of like that makes sense on a practicality level, but they just pop in and out of the story in a way that feels very much this has to be here to fill out the picture. While in the show, they just have our characters do that. They just have our characters and we flush them out and spend more time with them and get to know them more while they're in the thick of it, rather than getting to know a guy called Wendell. Or what about, Rachel, Kotia? Kotia exists in this book, but he's not a character. He is here, and then how did he end? He just stayed there, right?
Yeah.
And in this book, they then later have a character Holden meets on, what was the ship? Was it the Thomas Prince? That's infected by the proto-molecule, who then has to sacrifice himself and help blow up the ship. But we don't have a connection to him because he exists in that one chapter. So it's he is a character that comes in here to have a noble self-sacrifice, but we don't care because we only just met him. While in the show, they amalgamate these things and streamline them. So Kotia is a character, so when he sacrifices himself and he takes that role, it actually means something because we spent a whole season with him. We spent a whole journey with him. Although we wanted more from him, we understood it. But I just wanted to flag that up because that was some of the baggier moments of the book for me, was we have to let you know this character exists, but they just pop in, pop out, and then they're gone. And then there's another character, pop in, pop out, they're gone. And you're you could have actually just mush this together so we have a bit more
the way that the show
realism.
Condenses characters is so far been really smart. There was somebody missing that we didn't know wasn't in this book.
I think we knew.
Well, I forgot that Anna wasn't here.
Anna isn't the person who helps take down Aaron Wright. She's not even a part of the UN story or the Secretary General's story. She'll be in the next book. And I imagine she's where we picked up from when they enter ring space, when they get into the ring, that stuff. That's what Anna will be. But I did miss her during this because that ties into your next point, right? Which is Aaron Wright's downfall.
Yep.
We haven't talked about him. I don't know if you agree with this, but they described Aaron Wright. He's British, round-faced, older Indian man. And he was basically Brian George. The man that they describe is what Brian George would play.
Yes.
But it's funny because Brian George, obviously in the series, was Christian's husband. But it's so amusing because everything they were describing about Aaron Wright, I was it's just Brian George. It's Bashir's dad, that type of thing. I was having a good chuckle about that. But you have that down. What do you have to say about this? How do you feel about the Aaron Wright part of this overall?
I felt very disconnected from Aaron Wright because he is just there as an obstacle more than he is a character. We don't get his point of view. We don't get his interiority. We don't get any dumb speeches to his son.
Great speeches. I love that speech. But here's the thing.
I just like making fun of it.
Here's the thing that's really lacking. The antagonists in this book and in the previous, they don't really have a sense of purpose or agency or accountability or reasoning. On the most loose level, we hear basic reasoning, but they don't really have a sense of definition to them. Aaron Wright did this because in the story, you need someone in the UN to be a part of it. That's why. Fleshing out Aaron Wright in the show, it helped make the show better. It gave a point of view of why any of this is happening in the first place, which is my big complaint about the book. Big complaint is we still don't have a real good sense of why any of this happened in the first place, other than the basic theme of humans are dumb.
You do get the sense that there is a reason, but there is no clear indication that there is, really. You just assume that there must be, right?
But even when Mao is defeated at the end, there's a bit of a hollowness there because we still don't really have a great, understanding of why any of this happened outside of the most shallow thing of we want power, we want more advantage over others, and that's it. Which is still the baseline of what we get in the series, but there's a lot more complexities to it. There's a lot more nuances to it. There's a lot more to challenge us and to challenge them. When Christian is saying all of the stuff to Mao at the end of this book, there is no mirror. It doesn't really feel like there's a mirror held up to how Christian could be considered just as bad as them, while in the series, Ehrenreich exists for that very purpose. Ehrenreich is a version of Christian. In this, he's just a guy. Doesn't matter. Who cares? He is the equivalent of Havelock in the show. It's he does a thing, and then he's unceremoniously just dropped like a bag of rocks, and we move on. Who cares? Now Christian has a new job.
It just leaves you okay. And next thing, there isn't the weight or the heft to this moment, to this downfall, to these consequences, because you don't care about Ehrenreich as a person.
You have more of a feeling about Dr. Strickland. They give more weight to Strickland and or what his real name is than they do to Mal, than they do to Ehrenreich, than they do to evil Admiral Wynn. Yeah, even Admiral Wynn, or as the audiobook calls him, Nguyen, which, sure. Even he gets more characterization than the guy that we're supposed to fear the most, which is odd. Hey, is it a bummer to you that Mao, Jules Pierre Mao, is really just nothing but corporate bad guy? That's all he is. They don't even, in the show, they really chew on, they really go into the fact, he was a dad. He's a dad, and he's a dad of a person that died as a result of all of the stuff he's done. In this book, it's not at all a part of anything. It's just that happened, but you don't really get a sense of anything more from Jules Pierre Mao other than he is an instigation of the plot.
It's just, he's there because he needs to be there, because that needs to happen, because that needs to happen. And it's interesting that this plot is really littered with examples of that.
You don't have this, but we didn't have Dr. Accent getting a whole plot on Venus itself. We got Dr. Accent, Dr. Iturbi or whatever, but he was just I'm sorry to say it, he was just some autistic guy. That's how the book describes him. He's just some autistic guy. That's how the book describes. Don't blame me. That's how the book describes him. He's just some weird autistic guy. But there's no Venus plot. It's just a thing that is happening in the background, and then it emerges, and it's some weird entity that we don't understand. Any other changes or things of note that you want to bring up about the book, the show? Anything floating to your mind?
I want to compare how you think the cliffhanger works.
It works better because it's actually the end here, while in the show it's 5 episodes in.
Yeah,
6 episodes in of a 13 episode. It's
finale.
A mid-series break point. It doesn't have that same hit. Yeah, it doesn't have that same effect overall. I liked it. And there's no real feeling or indication that Miller returns, but it works because Holden is constantly feeling like Miller's in his head the entire book.
And questioning the impact that Miller had on him.
One of the differences I don't know how to feel about yet is in the series, they make it very upfront clear that Miller is not there.
Yeah.
In the book, we're left with him having returned and we don't know if he's real or not. That's a good thing, but what I was going to lead into was, in the show, even if they had Miller be there and not jut out, it's more apparent that Holden is losing his grip on sanity in the show by the time Miller comes. Well, in the book, I don't really get the sense that he's losing his sanity in that way. It's more the fact that he's losing his morality. Anything else you want to talk about? Caliban's War. The hybrids themselves were interesting. They were much more overtly a menace and hyper-intelligent than they were in the series.
We see things from May's perspective in the show.
Oh, we got the prologue, Rachel, of the book. That was from May's perspective.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yep. But we didn't check in on her the way that we did in the show. And Kotoa was not a character at all.
Just a corpse in this.
Yeah. And you meet his parents before you meet him.
Oh, here's a huge difference. I feel, and correct me if I'm wrong, listeners, I'm sure because we haven't rewatched the series, I felt like by this point in the series, we knew what the proto-molecule was.
Yeah.
Like, we knew it was like some...
We knew that it was from Phoebe and...
Well, we knew that already in this, but like we knew that it was like not a weapon per se, but like a thing that was like
a tool.
A learning thing. But that also, maybe season 3's later parts affecting my viewpoint.
Presenting it as an alien species sent this weapon to destroy...
And we don't understand
the potential of life on Earth.
And now it's adapting and doing something else heinous. Like, they are still getting towards that point in the book, but I feel like it was far more concrete, especially with Kotoa, where we saw how the human hybrid things had like much more of like a Wi-Fi connection, and like they had like this whole desire to like build and rebuild and rebuild and rebuild. And construct and change and adapt and all of that. So, and since we had Mao as a point of view in the series, we got to understand like the science kind of obsession with the proto-molecule and like why these different organizations are wanting to use it other than just duking it out. Like there's applications to be used for it. Well, in this, it's more like, they just want to duke it out. And this is what happened, and now things are crazy and wild. But I can't think of much else to say about Caliban's War. Like I said at the beginning, I'm mixed. I like certain aspects. I don't like certain aspects about it.
But you made a binary system.
I did.
Is it yum or yum yum, Ryan?
Well, I would give it a yum yum.
Yum yum.
But my hindbrain gives it a yum.
Fuck you. Yum. I'm just going to ignore all of that and say that I give Caliban's War a yum yum. Yum yum. Prax's stuff was amazing. Amos stuff, great. Holden stuff, okay. Avaslara stuff, okay. Bobby, better than the show.
Worse in some ways.
Yeah.
In unexpected ways.
Appreciated a lot of the adaptation decisions.
Yes.
For the show in hindsight, having now read or like listened to the book.
I agree.
It is a really solid novel, but it does have more than its fair share of moments that take me out of it and or make me cringe.
Because it's been, when was this that it came out?
2012, I think it's
2012-ish time. Is it long enough in the past where I can just go, well, it was a different time? Because like when I often, my sci-fi books of choice are often from the 50s and 60s. And there's certain things in there where I go, well, it was the 60s. Like when I read... Yeah, this type of book, it has some crazy shit. I'm like, well, no, it was from a different time.
It's enough to say, oh, it was a different time. I think it is acceptable to say it shows its age. It's has these markers that are like, yeah, that feels like the 2010s.
Oh, so long ago, yet not really. Well, Rachel, it was a pleasure to talk about Caliban's War. We shall be back whenever we finish it off, we will be back in the future. Everyone make sure to be tuned in. Make sure to stay alert for our discussion of Abaddon's Gate, which will be the third book. I am looking forward to this book a lot because it was the one that got condensed when it was done in the television series because of the cancellation. So they had to speed run their way through to the end.
I'm excited to know if the book also skips over Prax leaving the Rossi crew.
Well, we got that in this book, where he is now assigned by Christian to be the head of the Ganymede.
Because we get the banquet.
Yeah, we get the banquet. So in this one, we have to get closure on Prax more than just offhandedly done. Yeah, we actually get closure. How did you forget? You're too busy focusing on Christian saying, nah, Alex and Amos, they're not your friends. They just want to fuck you. I'm your friend because I don't want to fuck you. And I'm like, thank you, Christian, for letting us know that you are one of the few people in this book who don't want to fuck Bobby.
But she's also like, I didn't say that I don't want to fuck you.
Sure. Christian, bi icon, I guess. But thank you all so much for listening out there. You can support the podcast and get our discussions early over on Patreon. You get to be a part of a community Discord as well, and get so much other bonus content. Rachel, where else can people find our podcast?
If you want to email us, you can do that. Our email is yumyumpod@gmail.com. We are on various social medias linked for easy access down below. But if you feel like searching, it's yumyumpod or yumyumpodcast.
Make sure to rate and review the series and our podcast coverage. You can just drop that in or give us a comment or whatever you feel like. We would greatly appreciate it. The book was good. It wasn't great because it lacked a certain character. I'm noticing a lack of a certain gaunt gentleman. Where was the Belter himself, known as Gaunt Belter? That's how they would pronounce it in the audiobook version. He's a Gaunt Belter. There's no Anderson Dawes in this one either. He was absent from this one. Havelock? No, not yet. We'll have to wait a couple for him. Rachel, which character are you looking forward to seeing in book form now? We touched upon this last time, but now here we are again. I'm going to ask you again. Who in the book version form are you just chomping at the bit to see?
Nobody really leaps to mind. Nobody I'm like, yeah, I can't wait. There are plenty of people that I'm like, oh, I look forward to seeing them again. One of them really being Dr. Evie. I wonder if she'll get more or less to do when we come around to book 4.
The scientist lady on
And I was
Illis.
trying to remember a character from the third book.
Well, we have Anna, of course. Ashford?
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to Ashford because he's infamously terrible in the book.
Yeah.
And I want to know why. Every single person
talks such smack.
Every single person that I have encountered who have either watched the show or have agreed Ashford is terrible or not very good in the book. And I just want to know what he did or what he's going to do. So I can't wait. I'll tell you this. One person I am very, very much looking forward to getting in book form is Marco. Marco was great in the series, but with how they are writing characters currently, and I know that they'll improve as they go along, by the time we meet Marco, I'm hoping that the writing has greatly improved. But I'm looking forward to hearing and experiencing more of his shenanigans.
His hindbrain?
Oh, see, honestly, if we had that as his reaction to meeting Bobby, it would make sense. Although we found the actor attractive in the show, I didn't think of Marco as very much of a sexual being in the series at all. Like, he didn't have that to him at all. Like, that's an interesting thing. Like, he had this attraction towards Naomi because he wanted to own her rather than like he was sexually attracted to or found her even attractive in that way. But that's it. Thank you all so much for listening. Also, I'm looking forward to Gaunt Belter, of course. He'll be the hero in the next book.
But then he'd look up at her again, and his hindbrain would start bouncing back and forth between attraction and fear. Hindbrain, hindbrain, hindbrain.